To this, the fifth in our series of lectures on sustainability. It's a pleasure to see you all here tonight on the UCI campus. Over the past several weeks, we've had a range of speakers, and they have made many references to the critical role here in the United States, around the world of the business community, both in terms of protecting and reproducing unsustainable consumption and production practices, and also in terms of being the engine of change towards a more sustainable world. And the opportunities are enormous for the business community and for you if you decide to move into the business sector in the years ahead. The opportunities for being part of the engine of change that is needed here and around the world is tremendous. And tonight we're going to hear about some of those opportunities, some of the challenges that you face from a business perspective, some of the career paths that are most promising. It's a real pleasure to have a very distinguished panel. And we're going to start off. I'm going to introduce each of these people in turn as they make their opening comments. I want to start with Dinker Anand. He's a senior manager at Toshiba America Electronic Components Inc. He has 18 years of experience in terms of quality management systems and environmental management systems. He's certified in a large number of ISO standards. He's a black belt in Sigma 6, which has to do with management skills. He's been grappling with these issues for a very, very large corporation for many years. And please join me in welcoming him onto the stage to talk about the challenges of sustainability from his perspective. Mr. Dinker Anand, thank you.
Thank you very much. Good evening. So today I'm going to just touch on the subject of business and sustainability, as to what role business plays, why business is important to sustainability, and also focus on what's your role, why you are so important to sustainability. So these are the recent pictures from developing countries. See what we're doing to our air quality. And this is what we're doing to land, water, animals, and wildlife. Again, you would say, well, these are developing countries, what's it to me? Well, you'll be surprised to know that the US is a bigger polluter than these nations. You are most familiar with commercial planes. At any given time, there are 3,000 to 5,000 commercial planes in the US airspace. And again, I'm not including the Air Force, the cargo planes, or the CEO planes. Every other CEO has a plane of his own. There are 200 million registered cars in the US, 100 million trucks registered in the US. So you can see how much pollution we generate. You see, each skyscraper generates more carbon footprint than 4 villages of China or India. So this is what we are doing to our planet. The correct time to address this issue was 25 years ago. We are just 25 years late. But now the problem is, if we don't address it now, we are running out of time. This is it. Either by fix things now, or our next generation is going to pay a very heavy price. So I'm sure you understand the importance, the critical nature of what situation we are in. The only thing I can do is, on behalf of my generation, I can apologize for, hey, we screwed up, we're sorry. But then we are handing you over a huge problem that you need to fix. You got to be the smartest generation fit to fix this issue. So you got to think that it's now or never. So you got to take this matter very seriously. So let's talk about that. Yes, given environmental problems are global in nature. But let's dissect that what other nations are doing about it. It's in the common interest of all nations to establish policies for sustainable development. That's true. And none of the countries are doing anything. The biggest polluters are China, US, Russia, and India. 80% of the pollution are created by two countries, Chinese and US. And the truth of the matter is, we're not doing anything about it. China is not doing anything about it. There's no regulation in place. Yeah. Oh, I'm sorry.
I'm very sorry.
No, that's fine.
This room.
So I'll stand here. I'm sorry. I'm used to talking to Toshiba guys. They get paid to listen to me, so they sleep all the time. So, thank you for pointing that out. So, yes, it's given that it's a common interest of all nations to establish policies and sustainable development. And that includes economic goals, social goals, resources which are very limited, and environmental goals. December, I was visiting these nations, and firsthand I saw they're not doing anything. So it's very, very important that we address it. And as you know, our record has not been very good either. The first environmental summit was held by UN in 1983. 92, we had another one in Rio. Came 97 in Kyoto. And then 2002 in Johannesburg. We've been talking about it, not done anything. So it's very important for us to understand if there's no political commitment to solve this problem. The United Nations is the most ineffective body as far as environment is concerned. They're not doing anything about it. So, you think we have lost the battle on sustainability? Well, we can't afford to lose it. The very survival of the next generation depends on it. So we just can't lose, we just can't pack a pack and say, okay, we're giving up. So we got to take the other route. Politicians are not doing anything about it. United Nations are not doing anything about it. Countries are not doing anything about it. So that leaves businesses. Okay? Now all medium to big businesses are global organizations today. So if we can go that route, that is one way we can make a difference. For example, you walk into Walmart, you pick up a shirt, you see the made in China, India, Indonesia. It's an American organization, works globally, so if we can influence Walmart or say another business to go green and ensure we make sure that their suppliers are green, that we can make an impact. So that is one way we can make a huge impact by making our businesses green. Rather than going through around and waiting for a politician, waiting for a right president to come, or waiting for nations to make enough regulations. Well, there are countries, they can't enforce anything. So I think the one way that we can address this problem is through our businesses. So let's talk about global organizations and its supply chain. The most, I keep remembering about it. So if you don't hear me, let me know. I'm in a habit of walking around, okay? So what influences the business most? It's the stakeholders. People who invest money in the business. Now there are two kinds of stakeholders that controls the organization. One is financial institution. Their interest is guaranteed return over a long period of time. So they're not interested whether your business goes green or you invest money in green technology, because they are financial institutions like banks. They would rather invest that money in the house. It is 30-year return. They're looking for that kind of investment. The other investors that invest money in businesses, are mutual fund investors. Now, these are the most powerful investors today. Your 401, pension plan, hedge funds. They are the people who don't look at long term. They look at two things. They want higher return, but they look for the market trend. They invest money where they think the market trend is moving, and they can invest money in change and innovation. For example, Apple. For Apple decided a product which will download music from internet, its stock was 28 to 30 bucks. And everybody was standing on the fence. Nobody wanted to invest money in Apple. They were thinking, hey, if Apple is going to wrap up, go belly up. But what happened? These investors, when they saw that a lot of people, a lot of customers were downloading music, they knew there's a future there and started pouring money in. So what drives business is these investors, and we have tons and tons of billions of dollars waiting to be invested. Okay? But like I said, they look for two things. Political commitment. Now in green technology, we do not have political commitment or the market trends. If they think the market is going one way, they will invest a lot of money in change and innovation and new technology. Now where does the market trend come from? It comes from customers, people like you and I. If you stop using electricity or slash it by 50%, guess what happens? These investors are going to look at these electricity generators and they say, hey, the trend is downwards. So they're going to take the money out, and yes, they're going to invest it in new technology. So you drive the trend. Remember that. You are the most powerful entity if you want to make changes, especially in the case of environment. It is not politicians, it's not countries, it's not regulations. It's you. You play a major role in changing the trend towards which the country wants to be or the business wants to go. So change in innovation comes. Yes, people invest a lot of money, but people don't buy it. That's it. These investors take the money and run. But if you make it successful, so you got to change your thinking. So you got to start thinking global and act green. Because the whole thing hinges on you, basically. So you got to start think globally. If you buy a material, think where it is coming from. If it is coming from India, you know, they have polluted the hell out of it before they give you a $5 shirt. So you got to be a prudent buyer. So you got to start thinking globally, and again, like I said, think green. How can you, because all the American presidents, when they go to these summits, the first thing they hear is, okay, stop preaching. Practice what you preach. That is the message every president comes back from these summits. That you are the biggest polluter. You don't practice what you preach. Don't come and tell us it. If China is not doing anything about it, India is not doing anything about it, it's the same issue. It's because we don't practice what we preach. So now it's the time for you guys to start practicing. Because like I was just discussing, that the whole world is basically aping us. They look at us, what we do, they follow suit. So if you start thinking green, acting green, they will follow your footsteps. Chinese wear the same clothes as you do. They talk the same language as you do. Same thing with Indians. Now the new young Russians do the same thing. They watch Hollywood movies, they just follow your footsteps. They do exactly what you do. So if you start acting green, they will also follow your footsteps of that. So it's very, very important. So now what is involved? So remember, the fact is, if you want our future generation to enjoy a healthy and a prosperous earth, then we must correct our behaviors now. It's very important that we must change now. Like I said, time is running out. So what is involved? So what am I asking you to change? It is just a little tweak in your behavior, that's it. The first thing you need to understand that every activity you do interacts with the environment. Okay? And that is called environmental aspect. So you should know your aspects. Because anything you do, you take a gum, throw a wrapper. That wrapper is paper. Comes from where? Natural resource, that's your aspect. You throw it in a trash can, it goes to a landfill, the impact to the environment. And that's the next thing you should be aware of. Any change to the environment, whether adverse or beneficial, wholly or partially resulting from your aspect, is impact. So you should know how you're impacting the environment. Now, if you take that same paper and put it in a recycle bin, the impact is good. So that's all I'm asking you to do. Know what your aspects are, know how you're impacting the environment. All you have to do is do more of good things, less of bad things. If you trash that small piece of paper in a trash can which goes into a landfill, it's bad. If you take the same piece of paper and put it in a recycle bin, it is recycled, it will be reused. That's good. That's all I'm asking you to do. I'm not asking you to do more. It's easy. It's just that our thinking has to be, our behavior has to change. Sustainability is not very tough. It's the easiest thing in the world. The only thing is we have to change our thinking and behavior. Okay? We all use computers, right? What is our aspect here? Is consumption of energy. What is the impact? It's a depletion of energy resource. Now we don't think about it, but where is this electricity coming from? It's coming from a thermal power station which is running on coal, which pollutes the hell out of thing to give you that electricity which you don't even think before you use it. Okay? If you're not in a room, like I've seen houses with all lights on, why do we need that? It is just asking to change your behavior. If you're not if you're not in a room, turn the light off. My son keeps his desktop on 24/7. Why? Right? You go to any city in America, the skyscrapers, all the lights are on. Why? That's all I'm asking. Think. If you're not in a room, turn it off. That's a very small, minor thing. And that's what I did in my company. We used or added sensors all over the place. If people are not in the room, lights will go off automatically. That's all you need to do. It's a simple thing. Let's see how much electricity is going to save. How much pollution is going to prevent. And talking about market trend, if all of us in the US slash our electricity bill by half, guess what's going to happen to all these investors? They're going to look, the trend is going downwards, they're going to immediately invest in alternative renewable energy and see, we will change it overnight. Just your behavior. And what happens with this money saved? It's in your pocket. My home electricity bill was $300 a month. When I started slashing it by 50, now it's $80 a month. Air conditioning was on all the time. Hey, I want a house cool when I come back. Why? If I'm alone in the house, why do I need the air conditioning on in all the house? All I have to do is take a small cooler. I can buy one from Walmart, right, for $39.99 and keep it in my room where I'm using it. If there's no one else in the house, I don't need to turn the whole air conditioning on. We don't think that. In winters, we turn the heat on. The whole house is heated, even though one person is just in one room. Just that we got to think. That just by, it's money in your pocket. I've been fighting with my wife for the last year and a half. She wants to drive SUVs. And I said, no SUVs. She says, I'll keep driving Camry. I said, please be my guest. I want a smaller car which gives me 40 miles to a gallon. I'm not going to, there will be no V6 or V8 parked outside my house. It's just a behavioral change. Why do I need a V6? It takes me from point A to point B, right? Why do I need 8 miles to a gallon guzzler to go from point A to point B? It's just a way of thinking. My neighbor who drives a truck to go to his office, I can tell you the price of the gas by looking at him every day. When he's in a good mood, I know it's $2. When he's complaining and in a nasty mood and yelling at his kid, I know it must have gone over $3. And it is. But why do you drive truck? Why do you have to drive a V8 to go to work? I don't understand that. I've introduced in my office carpooling. hey, if there's somebody coming from your neck of the woods, hey, come talk the way or relax. So if I slash my gasoline bill by 50%, who's the winner here? It's me. And I have cut down my gasoline bill. It's not difficult. And guess who's the strongest lobby in the whole world? It's the oil guys. Our presidents don't open the mouth in front of them. And why? Because we all want to drive our independent cars. One guy on one car on a freeway. When three can go on the same car to the same point. You have to change our behavior. The biggest polluter in the world is oil and coal. And all we need to do to beat this, we don't need politicians. We just need to change our behavior. Why do I need V8? Half of the guys in Toshiba drive V8 trucks to go to work. Why? It beats me. So just think about that. The small changes we bring to our life, it's going to impact our environment a lot and impacts our business a lot because people are watching the business trends. If the gasoline use goes down, guess what's going to happen? Suddenly the alternate car is going to mushroom up. Because we have a lot of money waiting out there to be invested in more, but they all watch you. If you don't change your habit, they're not going to invest in alternate technology. You will get a lot of press thing every time, oh, we're going to bring all electric car. I've been hearing that from last 20 years. I've never seen an all electric car which is useful till date. They have the technology, but they want to invest it. Because you guys are not changing your habits. At the moment your business trend goes that people are being careful, they are driving small cars, and once the message gets to these investors that, hey, people are going for alternate cars, guess what happens? They'll stop making big V8 and V6s. So it all, you are going to drive it. So remember that. You are very powerful. So same thing with paper. It's a very minimal thing. We print everything. I like an article, I print it. When I used to train people, I used to train like 300 people at a time. Of course, they all paid to listen to me, but I used to give them handouts. And I know what they used to do with my handouts. The moment they reach their office, trash it. So first thing I did was, nobody is going to print paper till it's a must. I stopped printing paper. Why? How many trees are we killing just by printing paper? So think 10 times before you print something, especially in color. Okay, so you're using that toner, that's again, you're depleting natural resource. So all I'm telling you to change, again, not change, is basically common sense. It's smart thinking. Why do I waste a natural resource? Every time you order something from eBay or something, it comes in a box. What do? You throw the box in the trash. Goes to a landfill. Well, start reusing it. Packing material can be reused. Box can be reused to ship something out tomorrow. Pack it neatly and put it in the garage. Reuse it or recycle it. Don't put it in the garbage so it goes into a landfill. Again, it's not a huge change. It's just that we are being nice to the environment for once. Okay? So it's very important to think that way. So most of you are students, or you work in office kind of environment, you consume electricity. Make the commitment that I'm going to slash my electricity use by half. Is it very difficult to ask? No. Because when you leave your room, everything is on. The television is on, the printer is on, your computer is on. Turn everything off before you go. Before you know, you'll slash your bill by half. It's not asking a huge thing. Water consumption. You know, water is a very precious resource. Luckily, we are having rains, but we have rains every 5-6 years. Before you start hearing we are out of water. Stop your 20-minute showers, replace it with 5-minute showers. Right? In offices, I have put that hand sanitizers. So use a sanitizer, don't have to wash your hands every time. Stop using tissue papers, use hand sanitizer. Again, small tweaks, small changes, a huge impact on the environment. Okay, so those are the things that you got to start thinking. Like US is one of the biggest polluter in the country, in the world, and how it adds up. All our activities in US adds up to what US produces as carbon footprint. So as you know what a carbon footprint is. It's a measure of impact of our activities have on the environment. It is measured in tons of CO2 equivalent. US produces 6,000 tons of CO2, and that was 2007. I don't know about 2008 or 2009. Now, there are two kinds of footprints that you should be aware. One is primary footprint, that measure of direct emission of CO2 from burning fossil fuels, including domestic energy consumption and transportation, and you have direct control over that. So let's look at the ones that you have direct control. Gas at home, gas at home, right? Again, you can slash that bill by 50%, but right now if you look at an average family in US, 15% comes from gas, 12% from electricity, 10% from private transport, 3% from public, and 6% from flights. Just make changes, be aware what are your direct impacts, and then you can tweak it. Okay, so basically what I'm trying to tell you, that for example, I used to fly 3 times a month. I haven't flown for business for last 6 months. What I do is I call a person, train him, and have him train everybody else. I can audit people on the phone. I don't have to go there. So you can cut down. Indirect, you can see that. And if you just think about it, you can cut all those things down. Why do you have to buy 20 shirts? Because it's cheap? No. So think about it. Where it was made. If it is made in India, you see how much they polluted to give you that shirt. So moment your business or your market trend goes down, investing in the business changes accordingly. You will bring all your manufacturing back home if you listen to me what I'm telling you. It's that easy. Today all the manufacturing has gone to China. Tomorrow you will be in the job market and you won't find a job because, you know why? Because all the IT business, all the manufacturing business has gone abroad. You know why? Because of our habits. If you don't buy that sort of product, it will not be feasible, practical for Walmart to get that product from India, transport it all the way to the US. You will rather have a factory here across the street from Walmart because you paid. Investors saying there's no point getting it from India anymore. It's cheaper to get it in the US. So think about that. It is in your hands. So some of the things that you can really use is good housekeeping, maintenance practices. If you see something leaking, oil, water, fix it. Don't let it go. Okay? Spill prevention. If you are having oil chemicals at home, make sure that you don't spill it or you have something to prevent it. Inventory management, always know what you have. Just don't keep buying stuff you don't need. Okay? Prudent purchasing, like I explained. You buy something you need. If you don't need it, you don't have to just because it's cheap. Okay? Indians have, every business they have that photograph where they show a Walmart people trapping all other people and killing it. They're having fun on that because that's the way they know. Hey, we've got to make more shirts. Okay? They sell things cheaper here. Why? You know that? Everything is controlled by government. So they tell you there's a huge domestic demand, so you make your money in domestic market, take a hit on the export. And they are compensated by the government. So they sell things at a cost to you, so that they keep you hooked on. So don't fall for that trap. So think about it before you spend another dollar. Every dollar you spend, remember that 50% is being created by, or either polluted, or emissions were created on your behalf. 3 R's, remember that. Reduce, reuse, recycle. Make it as your mantra. That I want to reduce wastage, reuse everything, and recycle everything. Okay? Now, this is one thing I want you to learn is you should manage everything in life. Okay? Management is the most important key to be successful in life. How many times you fell off the diet routine because you didn't manage it? How many times you promised yourself, I'll go to the gym, and you didn't go after a while because you didn't manage it? Now, this is a Deming cycle. It is called plan, do, check, act. So remember, whether it's environment, it's your career, use this. Always have a goal. Like sustainability is a very simple goal / use of everything by half. When it comes to your career, think 5 years ahead. Where do you want to go? Where do you want to be? Start planning. Okay, how do you get there? What competencies, skills, steps you need to go to reach your goal? Do it. Then review it, check it. What you did was right or not. Act on it. And then repeat the same. And you see that wedge? For Toshiba, that's me. I don't let them slide back. They don't like me. Because if you don't, for you it's a discipline and dedication. Remember those two words, double D's. For me it's a standard because I don't let them slide back. If they have to a certain level, if they slide back, I give them help because that is in violation to the standard to which the wheel is stuck. For you, it's discipline and dedication. Those two words. If you stick that two words there, you will always go ahead in life, never slide back, no matter what you do. Remember these two words. You got it? So, in the environmental management, like I explained, it's all yours. You got to manage it. And this is again, so these are the planning for your environment. I just want to make it brief. Education and awareness, that's very critical for anything you do, especially environment. You increase your awareness, I just explained you what aspects are, impacts are. Then you conserve your resources. Slash your pollution by 50%. Remember, make it a goal. Sustainability is meeting the needs of the present without compromising the ability of future generations to meet their needs. So this is your goal. Okay? Thank you very much. I'm sorry I went over. Hey, I'm used to speaking for 3 hours. I'm sorry.
Great. Our next speaker has sort of had is an engineer who, for the first 8 years of his career, was an Imagineer at Walt Disney, solving problems in the happiest place on earth. He's now the Vice President for CTG Energetics. His own area of expertise is green building and corporate sustainability, large-scale development plans. He's been involved in projects around the country, including the building that you're all sitting in today. So please join me in welcoming Mr. Greg Shank. Thank you.
Okay, thanks, Richard. Make sure you guys can hear me. Yeah, I'd really like to just talk for a little bit from the perspective of working on the built environment, buildings in particular, and community planning, both locally in Orange County and around the world, and just talk for a little bit, and mostly interested in the questions you might have afterwards. So I'm going to keep it pretty brief. CTG is essentially a sustainability consulting firm, and just trying to answer the question of what a sustainability consulting firm is actually part of the challenge. But some of what I want to talk about today are first, what are some of the reasons that businesses are pursuing green buildings, choosing to be sustainable, choosing to make commitments towards sustainable development, and how has that changed over time? Where do we see that going into the future, and how you can contribute to that and help shape that future? The second are what some of the risks of that are, and some of the risks of not doing it, which I think is a really good companion to talking about why businesses are doing this and why businesses are taking a leadership role. And then finally, a few case studies. So first, some of these old school reasons. Things are definitely moving really rapidly in this area. Only 5 or 6 years ago, my job was really trying to convince businesses why they should build green buildings, why they should make commitments to being a sustainable business, doing sustainable development. That's almost gone. I almost never have to walk into a room and try to convince them they should be green, they should build green. That part is pretty much is done. But a lot of it was overcoming this, sure it's the right thing to do, but it's going to cost me a ton of money. The benefits are all squishy. And so a lot of what used to drive it was basically prestige, or companies had to believe in some of these soft reasons for doing it. So it included companies that thought they could get a reputation boost, good public relations from it, that they believed in the environmental benefit, even if the costs weren't well understood. Occasionally, businesses were close enough to, if it was more of an industrial process and they really understood their operating costs, they could justify it based on utility savings, energy bills, etc. And some of the more compelling ones were things like occupant comfort and understanding that for an awful long time, people were going to work in buildings, and the people that designed or constructed those buildings weren't paying a whole lot of attention to how comfortable they were going to be. It was, this is how we know to construct and build a building, and at least cost, and people will figure it out in terms of operating the building well. And linking those two things together and realizing that things like enhanced connection to the outdoors and daylight and control over the thermal comfort of a space were really important to productivity. So I'm not going to get into any one of these, but these have been the drivers for a long time. And what we're seeing today, and the emerging reasons are quite different. A lot of businesses are doing it because they are now required to. There are codes and ordinances. The City of Irvine has various codes. The University of California has mandates for certifying all the new buildings as green buildings. The state of California has mandatory requirements. There's a new California Green Building Code. So a lot of it's, like I said, it's no longer a choice. They have to do it, which has created a whole new set of questions and issues. But some of the more compelling ones are a recognition that there's really increased real estate value. Some of the smart companies are realizing, hey, our buildings are assets, and not only are the buildings assets, but they're where our people work, and I can attract more and better employees if my buildings meet some of these standards. Insurance companies are starting to offer improved packages or lower rates for buildings that meet green standards. In other cases, some of what you've seen is, you read about this in the news, companies make big splashy commitments, or in order to get a project approved, they say, oh yeah, it'll be carbon neutral, and we'll figure that out later. So a lot of the motivation is, people have been making business commitments, and they're just starting to figure out how to actually deliver on that. And something that we don't have time to get too far into, but there are those companies that are starting to realize reduced carbon impact by reducing energy and water and materials intensity can be turned into monetary value through carbon credits. There is some carbon trading going on, and there's a real strong emerging market of people in investment banks, Deutsche Bank, Goldman Sachs, etc., that are really working closely with businesses to value the investment they're putting into their buildings in the future as to what it might offer in carbon credits. Those are some of the emerging reasons, and those sort of create a business case. Before I get there, it's useful to note that You might have heard of the LEED rating system, especially since several of the buildings on the UCI campus here have achieved LEED certification. There's a lot else out there, and in fact, some of the campus housing projects have either achieved LEED or similar systems like this. Build It Green is a California-based system for mostly for residential developments. But there's a lot going on locally. There are city programs. The other hat I wear is I'm chair of the U.S. Green Building Council Orange County chapter, and constantly working with municipalities. So for anyone who lives off campus, you might be impacted by some of the city programs. So it's gotten to the point where there are practically a myriad of rating systems out there serving the different needs of the various types of projects, building projects that are out there. So how do those things combine to create a business case? When we talk, what is the business case for doing this? And I try to break it down into 4 types of scenarios or categories. And the first one is, ultimately it's about showing that it's a profit center for a business, that it ultimately increases profits. And how do you do that? It can be driving new sales, and we'll talk about an example of that. It can be reducing operating costs. But ultimately, a lot of what we're finding is that truly effective, elegant solutions make people feel good about making these sorts of decisions, and it's fun to make that sort of choice. One of my favorite examples is, if you can get Leo DiCaprio or Brad Pitt to like it and wear it or whatnot, that's your best, one of your best tools, right? And one of the projects we're working on literally did that. They attracted Cameron Diaz to come and be one of the first guests, and lo and behold, it's a hotel that just completely drove occupancy. So it's not just about a message of conservation and doing with less. It's about making something that you feel good about and delivers. Equally important, if you get the building LEED certified, but it's a pain in the butt to work in or to take classes in, and you sit there and you're hot or uncomfortable and the building doesn't work, all of that effort to make it a green building is out the window, and it's not delivering any savings at all if it's not a good place to live and work or study. The second case would be the fact that the technologies and the services that it takes to get there have rapidly matured, and most of them are cost competitive. That's been a real important factor, is that a lot of the finishes and carpets and whatnot that go into a project like this aren't special anymore. They are becoming what the majority of manufacturers offer in the marketplace. So that's a huge part of it. The third piece that some of you may read about or be interested in that has a much more social dynamic is that around the world there's a real focus, especially driven by shareholder groups, investor groups, and student groups, on corporate social responsibility and institutional social responsibility. And that's driving a huge amount of this, and that's trickling down to, a company will make a commitment to matching up to those sorts of programs and quickly realize the trickle-down impact is that means it has to improve its buildings, improve the way it develops, improve the type of real estate it purchases. And finally, where I see both the immediate future and to some extent long-term future, especially in the United States, especially more so in Orange County as it matures, is in the existing built environment. And it's going to be less and less about the flashy, new, shiny buildings and looking at the existing assets. And for example, one of the emerging skill sets that's just in incredible demand are people that can walk into a building and assess where there are energy savings potentials, water savings potentials, understand what's going on, how the building works, and similarly with larger community systems and whatnot. It's just an incredibly rare skill that's out there, but is in incredible demand these days. So moving on from that, what's good to understand about that is there are risks to building green, and these are some of the gotchas that have killed green technologies in the past. Really excellent things like the first electric car come out, and there are little gotchas in there that can set it back 10, 20, 30 years. And so understanding those risks is really important. the risks inherent with a new technology. One of my previous mentors liked to define a technology as anything that doesn't work yet. You know, when you're calling it technology, a new technology, it means it probably doesn't totally work yet. You don't think of the landline telephone as a technology because it's always there when you pick it up for the most part, but cell phones still, you know, to this day, with all of the stuff we're getting out of it, you walk into a dead zone and it's useless, right? So similarly, we worked on a lot of projects where we come up with a really awesome zero net energy type of solution, and some of mistakes we've made in the past are realizing who's going to have to maintain that system when this thing is built. And there's a great example of a nature center up in LA where the air conditioning system is run directly by solar panels. It's not connected to the grid, the electrical grid at all. All the wastewater is treated on site. But the people that inherited that building are a nonprofit organization, no real experience operating a high technology building, and it's been a bear to get that building to perform and be comfortable, right? So matching technology with, you know, the people behind it is incredibly important. The other issue we're finding is that since we've made this progression, you know, it's no longer about should I build green, why do we need to build green? It's okay, I'm building green. Now really the issue is sustainability has to perform. You know, we have to meet the demands of how society works, how projects get done, how investment gets made. And so one thing I wanted to point out is spend a little bit of time in this graph because this is a study of 45 or so LEED certified buildings over the past decade or so. And the things I want to point out are that up above that line you see a mix of basically all the blue, gold, and green buildings up there above the line are saving more energy than was expected by all the analysis and studies they did during the design and construction of the building. So those are performing even better than expected. The ones below the line are saving energy, but a little less than was predicted by the analyses, the model, and whatnot. But there are a few buildings, there's even a few gold certified buildings that are using more energy than quote unquote a code minimum building, right? And so it just goes to show just doing the design analysis, just making the commitments, just using the right technologies or getting the building LEED certified doesn't necessarily mean it's having the desired impact. And so most of our work these days is all about how are we making sure these things are performing and delivering all these savings we talk about, right? And so that's why I say some of those emerging skill sets are the actual verification and understanding how these things work. But in concert with that is the fact that there are also risks of not building green, and this is what I see a lot of business executives coming to understand more recently, which is that, for example, in the architecture, engineering, in the design practices, and in the legal practices, there's this concept of kind of the professional standard of care, and all the lawsuits you might hear about over building failures really come down to an issue of did the people designing and constructing that building exercise appropriate standard of care? And what's happening is a certain amount of sustainable design and construction and green building performance is becoming part of the standard of care. And if you build something today that doesn't meet some of these minimum green standards, you can be seen as negligent. And that's an emerging risk that is really driving the business decision. The next is that you're just leaving a ton of money on the table because there are government programs, there are utility programs, there are local tax incentives. There's all sorts of basically free money out there, and it's you're negligent as a business executive if you're not capitalizing in that and getting the best return you can on your money. The third would be just that failure to meet market expectations. I imagine many of you, expect UCI to be making that choice on your behalf and building classrooms that have healthy indoor environments and are responsible to energy and water consumption and whatnot. There's always increasingly ratcheting up expectation. The final one is that, there are climate change related and resource, material consumption related impacts we're dealing with right now, today. It's not about whether, global warming is real or not, and to what extent. We're dealing with a lot of those impacts today, and that's a lot of the larger context of the center and the impacts on security and the ways these are already impacting our lives and society and the global marketplace. And so businesses are beginning to realize, one of the best examples I can give you is a resort development in Lake Tahoe, and they've watched the water quality of Lake Tahoe degrade slowly over time, and there's a lot going on in that basin to keep what's special about Lake Tahoe. And a lot of the resorts recognize that if Lake Tahoe is substantially less blue and amazing and pristine as it is today and has been, people will stop coming, and certainly stop coming in the numbers, and the real estate will be dramatically less valuable. And so they need to recognize that as part of the business case for the resorts they operate. So finally, I just want to give 4 quick examples, a couple of case studies of where this has happened. So just 4 really different reasons why businesses are making this choice. I've talked a lot about this. Some are making it purely for the cost savings. Adobe is saving over $1 million a year on this large tower complex up in San Jose. And the facilities manager guy is a complete hero, not because he's a greenie or a tree hugger, but because he's saving a ton of money and doesn't need to justify those decisions because it's a huge business win. Pretty simple. And his main job now is going around giving talks and presentations rather than managing his own building, because it's such a compelling story and people want to hear what exactly he was doing. But it's really simple stuff. It's the simplest example I can give is oftentimes buildings like this get constructed with really complex systems to control all the air conditioning coming on and off and lighting coming on and off. If those things aren't really tuned constantly and kept up constantly, what happens is the engineers just put the thing in manual because they're overwhelmed, and things are just running 24/7. That's why I say walking into buildings and finding some of those things out and being able to make some simple adjustments to taking the thing off of being full throttle 24/7 can be one of the most impactful things you do. Second, totally different example, is a project I just finished working on in Las Vegas, this city center project with MGM Mirage. They had a vision of, Las Vegas has this stigma of being completely unsustainable, opposite of sustainable. How can you have a green building in the desert? And they knew if they were to build this huge new $9 billion complex, they were pretty convinced it was going to fail if they didn't completely transform the image of Las Vegas and bring really strong commitments to sustainable design. There's still some question about, okay, they reduced their water consumption by 60%. It's still coming from Lake Mead, which has its issues. I'm not, explaining this project away, but they made the commitment knowing that they had to transform that image. It's up to all of us as to whether they did it or not, but that was the main driver for them. It was worth a lot of money for them to be able to have a credible performance in that regard. The third one is, again, totally different reason. In some industries, it's all about competition. The automakers have been trying to outcompete each other for the greenest buildings and developments, largely to overcome the stigma that their core business of building cars has the impacts it does. But I want to tell one story that shows how a lot of different players can be involved in a really amazing solution. We started working for Toyota on the carbon footprint and the energy use of their auto shows that travel around the country, and they had 18-wheeler trucks that had to cart their auto show materials and whatnot around the country. And so we started going at it. Okay, we replaced the lights with LED lamps. We got a lot of materials reduction things going and reduced it to 12 semi-trucks instead of 18. We thought we were doing great. We ended up with, okay, we made a bunch of reductions, but it's still a pretty big impact. And they said, we want to offset that. We want to be carbon neutral. So what a lot of companies do is they go practically on the internet, and you can look it up, you can offset. You see it all over the place. When you buy an airline ticket on Travelocity, you can offset your emissions for that trip. They were going to buy offsets on that would go into some pool to create hopefully some amount of reduction or fund renewable energy or whatnot. At the same time, we were working with Clinton Climate Initiative on some grant programs and whatnot, and at the same time, Hurricane Katrina had happened within last year or so, and fortuitously, we put 3 and 3 together, and the money Toyota was going to use to offset their emissions anonymously was funneled through nonprofits and was used to put solar hot water heaters on homes that were being rebuilt in New Orleans. And what it did was just completely transformational. People that were going to have to move back into some of this low-income housing were very sensitive to their utility bill. By Toyota funding solar hot water heaters on those homes, it reduced the utility bills of those homes by $50, $70 a month. That was the difference for some of those residents moving back, being able to get off of food stamps or even move into the house to begin with. And it's just that's the kind of connection, that's what I'm seeing moving forward. That's hitting on social aspects, that's hitting on economic viability of reconstruction in New Orleans. And it's a way for Toyota to feel like we didn't just pay off our carbon offsets, we invested in something that's going to have huge trickle-down impacts. And the final case study, really close to us over in Newport Beach, near Newport Harbor High School. Other entities do it for education or to enhance fundraising. So for the Environmental Nature Center in Newport Beach, it wasn't about necessarily just saving money or this or that. It was knowing that they could attract additional money to fundraise to finance the education they wanted to provide by doing exemplary building. And sure enough, groups all around Orange County are renting out this space to hold meetings, and elementary and basically K through 12 students are there every day learning about these sorts of technologies and whatnot. So there are a lot of different reasons you can go after it. But these are some of the more recent stories and really encouraging stories, I think, about how business can take a leadership role in this. So thanks for the time. Eager for your questions later on.
And now, our last speaker for today's session, Dr. Kirwan Rockefeller.
Welcome to the University of California Irvine distance learning demonstration of how to create well-designed voice-over PowerPoint online lessons. What you're hearing me say come from my notes in PowerPoint. You can print out the slides and these notes by, and we're not exactly sure, so we have to add that. The slides you are looking at form the PowerPoint online lesson template. The narration you hear has been added by...
While we're figuring out I'll just say a couple of words about Kirwan, technological wizard. He's the director of Arts, Humanities, and Social Science at UCI Extension. Editor of The California Psychologist, also the author of the book Visualizing Confidence. Right? And he designed, implemented, and oversees, among a number of things, UCI's certificate in sustainability and leadership. Hope this works. Kirwan Rock, please.
Well, thank you for having me here tonight. Thank you for having me here tonight. I really want to give my thanks and appreciation for the Center for Unconventional Security Affairs for inviting me here tonight. I know that a lot of what I'm going to talk about you may feel like doesn't apply to you because you really can't wait to get out of school, and the idea of continuing education coming back to UCI may not be a really attractive idea at this point in time, but a couple of lessons that I have learned in putting together these programs here. And let me also say that Richard Matthew and Brian McDonald have been advisors to a lot of the work that we're doing here. And also let me say, because you may be a future customer of ours, alumni get a discount on tuition at UCI Extension. How many of you are familiar with UCI Extension? You know what it is? A lot of people don't know what UCI Extension is, but we are the continuing education arm of the university here. We provide a university-level training experiences and education. For adult students, our main population is usually 30 years of age and older, up to 50 and even 60. For people who are looking for ways to retrain themselves, to advance their career, to enhance their career, or to even change a career. And all of our courses and our programs are UC vetted, so the instructors are all UC vetted and the curriculum is UC vetted. And in many ways, we do extend the university into the community. We have 35,000 enrollments each year. We have 41 professional development certificates. And a professional development certificate is 150 hours of study or more. We also have 32 of them fully online. 20 specialized studies programs, which are a little bit smaller. And in 2008-2009, we awarded over 1,400 certificates at our annual graduation ceremony. So I like to say again that in the truest sense of the phrase, extension extends the university into the community. Again, our student body is really people that, for whatever reason, can't go back to school, don't want to go back to school. There may not be a degree in that area that they're looking for. And anecdotally, we say at University Extension, come from your ears, the degree will get you the interview, the certificate will get you the job. Because certificates often are very practically oriented, they're grounded in research, they're grounded in academics that are happening here at the university, but they're very up to date, they're very applicable to an actual working environment. And in fact, I hear from many potential employers and say, you know, well, we really can't find people who understand the theory and the application. And so I know that at Extension, one of our goals is to really give you the application. What do I do with this stuff? How do I apply it? I also hear from potential employers that when they're hiring you guys, they're trying to find people who understand, again, theory and application and know how it all works together. So keep that in the back of your mind for the future if you're looking to brush up. If you're looking to get some up-to-date information that can aid you in your own career development, we're the guys for you. Again, we have the capacity and the capability to bridge research that's happening here on campus, and we really, I try to keep up to date on what CUSA is doing, what Newkirk is doing, Environmental Institute, many of the academic units as well, and again, bridge that to a professional community. And we work very strongly with strategic partnerships, and we certainly have a mechanism and an infrastructure to move forward. So what is sustainability? We were talking about this a little bit this evening before you guys came in, and many of us are very familiar with this definition here, and we really take this to heart at the extension programs. But I also like this definition as well, that sustainability provides a framework for humans to live and prosper in harmony with nature rather than at nature's expenses, protecting, regenerating rather than degrading something. Everything that we care about, a growing economy, human well-being, security, food, safety, transportation, buildings, energy, is comprised, undermined, or lessened by environmental degradation. So I think that's really true. You know, what I've also found, because I've been around long enough, is that environmental awareness isn't necessarily new. In fact, when I was putting together the program about 3 years ago, I found a lot of people would say to me, oh yeah, I've heard of that, I used to do that. I was at the very first Earth Day in 1970. I remember that when I was probably about your age or so. But in our country, we do have a train of thought that is environmentally aware and conscious. I also was raised on the Chesapeake Bay in Virginia, and I remember in the 60s my father talked about the oyster beds that were dying in the Chesapeake Bay. And that was something that I was raised with and understood, so it's always been a part of my emotional makeup and my professional expertise, and also my personal interest as well. So then what's business got to do with it? I have worked in the corporate community for a number of years before I came to UCI. In fact, I worked for Bank of America in 1984 and 85 or something. And, I worked in the corporate philanthropy department. I think I'd be a banker, but it didn't work out for me at all. And at that particular point in time, corporate social responsibility meant just a couple of very basic things. At the bank, we had a philanthropic foundation that gave money to nonprofit organizations to do really nice things. We had senior executives in the bank that would sit on board of directors of nonprofit organizations because that got them closer to the community. And we had volunteer groups. And the volunteer groups would go out and do good things. March of Dimes, Race for the Cure, and that was about it. Because business said, we have no role to play in corporate social responsibility. There's nothing there for us. However, I think that has changed. And a lot of things I think have changed over the past 20, 30, or 40 years or so as well. So I like this particular quote also. I'm sure you all know green to gold. Historically, corporate interest in the environmental area tends to rise and fall. But this time seems different. More and more companies have come to see opportunities for growth and profit through a focus on sustainability. And I know that as I started to develop some programs at UCI Extension, I look for two basic things. And businesses are coming to me and say, how do we make money? How do we save money? Quickly, we know that there are some big drivers in sustainability in a very grand scale. World population, it's getting hotter, flatter, and crowded. Of course, we know that as well. Climate change, oil, legislation, as I like to say, is certainly driving the train down the track. And a metaphor that I often use is that train is coming down the track pretty fast. And for a lot of us, we're laying the track as the train is coming down the track. So at Extension, we have several different professional development programs that we offer. Sustainability Leadership, which is an overarching program. I have a program in sustainable buildings that looks at energy efficiency. Developing a new program right now on community planning and development, which bridges urban planning, architecture, looks at SB 375, all of those things as well. Certainly environmental management, facilities management, and light construction. And kind of an interesting thing here, when I started to develop these programs a couple of years ago, 3 years ago to be exact, no one knew what the word sustainability meant. Everybody knew green. Oh yeah, I kind of get that. I know what that's about. But a lot of people didn't even know what it meant. Now, and as one of my colleagues has said tonight, a lot has changed and a lot has been moving forward, but I find that very interesting. You were talking about a couple of years ago, you had to convince people. You don't have to do that anymore, which is really kind of exciting. So in grand sum there, extension programs, what we try to do is provide an interdisciplinary approach, integrating sustainability and environmentalism with business management strategy to achieve corporate social responsiveness. And a couple of things I want to point out here. Interdisciplinary. We were talking about this before you guys all came in today, and that sustainability really does seem, and it very truly is, interdisciplinary. When I talk to employers and they're looking to hire somebody, they say, I can find someone who understands the finance of triple bottom line, but they don't have a clue about legislation. I can find someone who knows about legislation and AB 32 and SB 375. They don't know what a marketing campaign is and how to integrate that with our corporate strategy. So what's really intriguing is that as you continue in your academic career here at the university, another question that Richard asked us beforehand is, what can you do? Do anything you can do. Do all that you can do. Learn, go to seminars, go to courses, question your professors, talk to them, talk to other people that help you network into the business community to find a job when you get out of here. Again, it's about integrating, it's about a systems perspective. I know in most of my programs here, what we're really trying to do, and I think you guys are ahead of this already, is that we are trying to help teach a systematic way of thinking. Now, my colleague also here was talking about thinking, and thinking influences behavior. And I know in many of these programs here, what we're trying to do is to educate and aware people and I think you have a head start on a lot of that, about how it is all connected together and how to actually change your perceptions and your attitudes, which ultimately change your behavior. I'm a social psychologist, and when I first got involved in this, I thought, you know, I just have an anecdotal experience from being at Earth Day 40 years ago. But what I came to understand, and that what we try to instill in all of our programs, is that sustainability, I think for me, at its essence, is truly about changing an attitude and a perception. And once you change that, then you can change behavior. And again, it's about integrating into strategy. When in the business world, we talk a lot about strategy. That's very important. And I really am using the word more and more now of responsiveness. I know the general term is corporate social responsibility, but I find myself using the word responsiveness because for me, when you say responsibility, it implies that it's all their fault and all of the solutions are up to them. And having worked in the corporate community, that's not the way that they understand it. However, business and the corporate community can respond, can have a responsiveness to the issue at hand that is appropriate for their market share, for their type of business, for their global positioning, their finance, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And what I've also found really interesting is that I have yet to meet a business executive who doesn't want to save money or who doesn't want to make money. And so by taking this integrated approach, this interdisciplinary approach, which changes your thinking, your perceptions, and your behavior, you really get to integrate a strategy. And I know from talking to many employers, that's what they're looking for. They're looking for thinkers. They're looking for people who get it and know how to then do it. A couple of more slides here, and I know we want to get to our panel discussion. We're currently working right now, I've been working for about 3 years or so with a group of other educational institutions around the country, what we call ASG. It used to mean a small group, but now it got fancy and it means action, solutions, and growth. University partners from around the country in North America that are partnering to put together programs. And in 2009, we educated over 500,000 students and offered more than 20,000 programs and courses. The one that I am working on most right now is the Decision Making and Climate Change program. I'm working with the University of Washington, the University of British Columbia, Northwestern University, and UCI as well, to create this online, fully online program for people from literally around the world that are taking. So, you know, primarily my audience at UCI Extension is the continuing education adult. Again, 30 to 50, 55, 60 years of age. But I thought you might find this of interest, that many of the people that come to our programs are highly educated. They're employed in transition, is a nice way to say. They're looking for work or they're self-employed. We have people that are coming from all walks of life. And what I'm finding is that many people come to me 20 years after you, and that they're coming to me at age 40 or something like that and saying, you know, I had to do what Dad wanted me to do. I had to do what somebody else wanted me to do, or, you know, I now want to do what I want to do for whatever reasons. We were talking also earlier that you have to have a vision and a passion of where you want to go. And I like to say that if you don't know where you're going to go, you're going to end up someplace else. And it's probably not where you want to be, it's where somebody else wants you to be. So keep this in mind again during your academic career right now. Follow your passion. Do what you want to do. Study what you want to study. Put it together in your way so that you don't have to completely change your life 20 years from now. Just a little word of caution or advice. We have people that are coming to our programs literally from around the world. All of my programs at UCI Extension are online. We have all of California covered. I have students coming from international areas of London, of New Delhi, many of the estates here. And it's very intriguing. I even have younger students, maybe such as yourself, that are doing all their coursework on their iPhone. So technology is here. Technology is making a lot of things possible that we may not have been aware of before. And what's really interesting about using the benefits of technology is that we're creating truly a global community of like-minded thinkers here. and that's coming out of UCI. So, again, what I'm finding is that many people have a misperception about what online education is. I'm not going to go into that right now, but suffice it to say that technology, and you guys know this, you know, you're using your technology all the time, is a really efficient way of increasing your knowledge base. Just a real quick snapshot to give you just an idea of sort of the things that we do. In spring 2010, I'm offering a couple of courses online: green supply chain, energy retrofits, the green building bottom line there, developing sustainable planned communities. In summer of 2010, I'm offering a couple of other programs as well. Particularly one that I'm interested in is the bottom one here. We are actually going to be doing a global sustainability leadership workshop on campus. It is a residential program, and it is targeted primarily to international business professionals, but I might also add it's open also to domestic people in the United States as well. I like to call it a boot camp, a sustainability boot camp where you get the highs and the lows and everything in kind of in between here. But what we're trying to do is, again, extend UCI into a global market. Looking ahead, just real quickly, I'm almost at the very end here. A number of other programs that I'm developing at UCI Extension, transportation. We know that water is a big issue, security, of course, civil engineering, food. Food is a very big issue. There's no lack of areas that need a sustainable approach. So thank you for your time. I think I kept it to time there. And I think we're now going to move into our panel discussion. All right, but thanks.
Let me invite the other panelists to come and join us up here at the table. I have to say, I was Kirwan introduced me to some of the online education. I have to say it's very cool. I'm expecting that in about 2 years I will be nothing but a live feed from somewhere else, and will no longer appear on the campus in person. At least that's my goal. But let's sit down, and I'm sure some of you have some questions. Please, we have about 15 minutes. First, do we want to start off? We always, yes, ma'am.
Seems like a lot of the main driving factor behind having supply chains overseas and getting your t-shirts manufactured in India and elsewhere is the lower cost. How do we change that? How do we start implementing a green supply chain?
Well, there are two things where you touched. One is when you know a thing is made abroad, it's actually not cheaper. That first thing you need to know. The government is subsidizing it. Number two, they're polluting a hell out of the towns where they're making it. The dye, color is all going into the river. So you have to compensate for that. Now, if you buy things only when you need it, buy when you must, then they'll get the message. Right now, the message from all the manufacturers and businesses, no matter what we give, these guys are going to buy it. So if you're going to give this message to our businesses that we are prudent buyers, don't dump your junk on us. So get the message. See, business will start moving back, which is already affecting because the transportation cost effectiveness is, they are trying to start working on that. Give you an example. One of the products that we made in Asia, because the customer was here, was being shipped to US and then shipped back to China. Where it was manufactured and where it was delivered was actually a mile away, where it was coming from US and going back. So nobody is looking at the cost effectiveness, where it is being made, where it's being sold. Once we start looking into it, then you will see it is cost effective to make it here rather than some remote place. If you add up all, if you put pressure on your business to be green and supply chain to be green, you will see that businesses will start coming back to US.
Other questions?
Well, I just kind of want to piggyback on what she was talking about. I spent a lot of time looking at these issues and the driving forces behind getting, as you say, customers to demand products that are manufactured responsibly, or we could say green if we like. And it seems like in looking at a lot of this progression, the driving force is you'll save money, right? You know, especially when you talk about the buildings that we're going to build and how we can actually influence businesses to do this by money that they'll save. But it seems like, as she's pointing out, that a lot of the reasons that we have these impacts and outcomes that are non-sustainable is because of our zest to save money by not covering the externalities. And so when we simultaneously say, listen, let's drive sustainability through getting people to realize how much money they'll save, but then also tell them that, hey, if you want to influence your businesses to do the right thing or to operate sustainably, it's going to cost you more money. That's a kind of a disconnect in the message that I think a lot of consumers get confused about. So that seems to be a problem to me, that if we're going to cover these externalities, fundamentally that means we're going to have to spend more money on the products that we consume. So if we bring people into the sustainability movement by telling them that they're going to save money, they get confused by this. And I'm just wondering if you guys think about this or how this particular conundrum can be most effectively addressed.
Well, yes, I understand your question is, it is confusing, but if, like I talked to Richard earlier, that if you start educating people early, especially in schools, that you need to look how the product is manufactured. You have to be conscious of that. You have to be environmentally conscious. Yes, you might pay a little more, but again, like I said, if you're a prudent buyer, you buy what you need, rather than buy 10 shirts you don't need. You spend more money then. So you've got to think in your head, logically, that I buy one shirt which is made in the United States, which is environmentally safe, right? And it meets all the requirements. Or I buy 10 shirts which is made abroad, right? Where the labor might be children making that shirt. The color they're using is toxic. So you have to weigh and balance what works for you. Like I said, for everything you buy, like I was discussing, you interact with the environment. So decision is yours. Eventually you need to take the decision. But when it is, it is made environmentally friendly manner, here you have a control, the quality control and environmental control. I don't mind paying extra bucks on that.
Right, you might not. But
Yeah,
a lot of
that's
other
true.
people may,
Exactly.
especially when the sustainability movement is telling people you should do this to save money, and then you
Right.
say, but you got to buy this more expensive
Right.
T-shirt.
That's
So
true.
there's a bit of a disconnect in the
that's-
driving force of the message of
That's where
sustainability.
I agree with you. But at the same time, the person who saved $5 on their shirt drives a V8 and spends $20 there. So overall, you got to look at the whole picture. That's what the business is trying to tell you. Is look at the whole thing. Look at the whole picture. Not just at one particular.
I would add a couple things. I think it takes multiple, there isn't one silver bullet solution, right? There are multiple. And I think from my perspective, there are some things that are inevitably going to global village supply chain and make sense. There's some that are never really going to make sense, like food. The average produce item in the grocery store travels something like 1,100 miles. And oftentimes we grow it in Irvine and it gets shipped out and comes back. There are some things that just make no sense. There are others that, if done right, you could see it making sense. Like on that city center project, there were some areas where we had no choice but to buy from around the world. And our choice was to send people around the world and work with those manufacturers and say, we want the low cost item and you can produce it at a much lower cost, but how can we turn it into a win-win? How can we make sure that our buying your product, is investing in your employees at a living wage and meeting some of the same standards? And it's certainly not easy, because if you just say our US standard is what you should adopt, boom, that's not being very sensitive to local conditions. But if you have that dialogue of, let's have similar goals in this. We want net environmental improvement and social benefit. We don't want to get a lower price at the expense of your water quality and your people's quality of life and whatnot. You know, I think we showed an ability to have some success there. The other one that I don't have huge particular expertise in, but Europe is using a lot, is carbon taxes. They're not doing so much a cap and trade type system where businesses have an allotment to emit so much carbon and they trade that, but they're saying all commerce is taxed based on its carbon intensity, and there's that natural pricing incentive. But to the extent that that creates competing price signals is very real. But I think ultimately what we find is that the kind of environmental movement has struggled with that externality pricing for the longest time. I mean, I know I studied in college too, and to me, problem solving each particular situation and looking as far down that across the life cycle as possible is what starts to point you as to where the solution might lie. Because sometimes there's just no way we should ever be shipping food all around the world and have a mentality that I can always buy green grapes every month of the year and they're just got to come from wherever the world can grow it. It's eat seasonally with what you can grow locally, kind of stuff. But there are going to be more technical nutrients like building products maybe where it's a net environmental benefit to view it globally. So I think it changes depending on each material.
I'd like to just add a couple of comments there, kind of bridging on what Greg was saying. You're right, sometimes it's nuts. It doesn't make sense, but sometimes human beings don't make sense as well. But to kind of bridge what you just said, how many of you go to the farmer's market across the street, maybe on the weekend, University Center? I've talked to a lot of people, God, I really love organic blueberries. So I go over there, or I go to another farmer's market, and you know what I find out? The organic blueberries were flown in from Chile on a 747, so it's nuts. What are we doing here? So I think a lot of it is, for me, education as well. Naturally, I come from a university. So I think it's an education and an awareness to really question and to really ask those tough questions. Human beings are able to hold cognitive dissonance in their minds where they can hold multiple thoughts simultaneously, even if they're diametrically opposed. But I think, again, that goes for me, attitudes and perceptions, questioning and saying, why am I buying blueberries from Chile and they're not seasonal here? So I think you're absolutely right.
Yep, please.
So you guys have mentioned that the ball's on us and we need to make our personal decisions and consumptions, and that choosing not to buy a V8 instead of something more sensible will, urge the businesses to respond to that demand that we give them. So I guess my question is, how do the businesses actually gauge our demand? How do they know what we want? I mean, we can choose not to buy a T-shirt from India, but they're not going to know that. And so what methods, I guess, do they use to really gauge what the consumer wants? And do they just wait until they notice that, this product isn't selling very well, why is that? Or do they, I don't know, what needs to be used to bridge that gap, I guess?
I mean, I would say quickly, let your voice be heard. Tell them. Most organizations that have products, they have helplines or customer service, and so let them know, yes, don't buy it, don't buy the chili and blueberries, just say no, I'm not going to do this, and they'll eventually get the message. But also there are more formal ways as well. Let your voice be heard.
One thing I'm hopeful about is, I know it's a huge buzzword, but social media does seem to be changing that a little bit. The signal's getting much more current. For a long time, I know a lot of it was focus group driven, essentially, that they weren't necessarily waiting, putting the product out there and then really reading, it was more like, we sat down, 6 people for a week, and they told us they were representative and this is what they wanted, and they make big decisions based on those sorts of things. And I know, for example, it's baffled me sometimes, some master plan community decisions get made based on these very theoretical scientific studies of, they break down the population into these cool names like cultural creatives and winners with heart and all these things, and they design, this is our mix of homes we're going to build because we've studied the population and this is the way they go, right? So the seeping into that corporate culture, though, is you hear terms like viral marketing, social media, and those signals are starting to make a difference. And the only specific example I can give you is for the city center project. I know that they put a lot of early feelers out in terms of condo buyers, and they were shocked that the #1 most frequent issue that was coming up was green sustainability for condo buyers. And they tuned into that and they really listened to that. But I think the only other example I can give you is it's really about the products. They realize things have to work and have to appeal to multiple senses. The first generation Prius was not that successful. The second one wasn't dramatically different other than it was just a better car. It was more functional. And so I'm rambling a little bit, but I think the opportunity I see is that the information ubiquity in the world and the leverage of some of those social media tools I think really is creeping into business strategy decisions.
And to add to that, to your question, most of the businesses have a strategic planning tool that looks at the environment the business operates in. The business operates in an environment which is the main factor is your customers, what are they doing, competition, what they are doing, technology, where it's headed, and trends. So they look at those factors before deciding whether to design new products, like we are custom designer chips. So we look at all those factors. Most of the businesses today look at all those factors.
Can you repeat the factors? Oh, you say in the microphone.
Oh, I'm sorry. So you heard what I said? Okay. So what I said was basically most of the businesses today have a strategic planning group that looks at what the external environment the business operates in. Most of the businesses have an external environment that they need to constantly watch. One is, what is customers doing? What is competition doing? What is technology doing? What is market trend doing? So they got to constantly look at those factors before they decide for the next year plan.
You have a question back there?
With regards to business sustainability, I work for a law firm, and we don't work in a LEED certified building, but we're trying to make our company as a whole more sustainable. We're taking our beavers and putting them on discs and stuff, and we're changing a lot of our electronics to more simpler things, but all the electronics and stuff that we're trying to get rid of to become more sustainable, waste sites aren't taking, and if they will take it, they're trying to charge us up to $50 per phone to get rid of it. So it's not very cost effective for my company now to become sustainable due to the extra costs, and we're not to just throw it out. That's awful to do because it's electronic waste. So do you have any suggestions on what can be done with already established companies to become sustainable?
So if I understand clearly, you're talking about e-waste?
We have e-waste, we have
Okay.
mass amounts of paper waste. But
There are a lot of companies which offer free recycling of e-waste. Like Best Buy is one, there are many firms. They announce it, they advertise it, that on this Saturday from this hour to this hour, you can give your e-waste to them and they will do it for free. So there are a lot of companies, a lot of businesses that do that for free. Toshiba also is one of them that does that.
It's kind of a mix of regulation and local issues there. In a lot of the waste areas, we're still in this area of transition where, just recently there manufactured take-back, programs where that's either required or some are enterprising in doing it. And what we've seen is we're still in that kind of transition zone where there are some businesses trying to make it to do that recycling and reprocessing and whatnot, and something happens like the economic, trouble of the last couple of years, and some of those businesses go away, and if it's not somehow government mandated or regulatory, your ability to be environmentally responsible can go up and down, or the cost for you to do it. So that's where we see there becomes a role for public investment in that, and some cities are better than others. I do know that most cities do have periodic collection periods as well, so probably the best option is not relying just on the waste company, but either city programs or manufacturers that will take a variety.
We have time for one last question.
This is a continuation of the other question. I noticed that a lot of people want to do something new in the building. They hear about that it's good to change all the light bulbs and to do little changes that maybe can save money, but the waste that we are producing is just there. And when I started working on this company, which is property management, I noticed that they were throwing away all the light bulbs that they are really dangerous because they have mercury, but nobody knows what to do with them. Now, I tell them not to do it, but now we don't have place to put the light bulbs anymore, and it's just a lot of waste. Just to try to, the transition from the regular or the normal to the green is really creating a lot of waste that, honestly, we don't know. I mean, I have no idea where to put it. I don't know if you can discuss it or help everybody.
No, I know it's a big challenge. I mean, our whole business is sustainability consulting, right? And we struggle with the same thing. So it's not, but I guess two thoughts. One is, some of that's the responsibility of the designer, right? Again, it's the catching that early on in the process. And the concept that I think is most useful is essentially creating technical cycles and biological cycles. If any of you have read Cradle to Cradle, Natural Capitalism, there's some books that get into this kind of concept, but we're thinking about when we decide what materials to put into the building, thinking through what is going to be the life of that material. And that's something that just hasn't happened, and we're going to have to deal with that for probably still decades to come until the building stock turns over once or twice. But I think there is a growing recognition that it's not enough to just say you have to recycle. There have to be both specific education programs, and you have to make it something that's easy and thought through and provided for just in the design of the building. The providing for the ability to segregate that kind of waste within the building, lots of things. But it's one of those, there isn't a silver bullet answer until we start from the beginning designing for what's the end of life, for every material we put into a building or a car or a product.
Please join me in thanking tonight's panel. If you happen to be in Sustainability 1, please regroup here in 15 minutes. Thanks very much.